The violet tears. The crystalline forests of Zephyros shimmered under the 3 moons, casting prismatic shadows across the moss-covered ground. Sarah Minth pressed herself against the rough bark of a sentinel tree, her breath coming in shuddering gasps as violet light pulsed beneath her skin, traceries of luminescence that followed her veins like rivers of starlight. She had run from the bonding ceremony the moment Elder Thessa announced her name with barely concealed disgust. The other candidates had stepped back, creating a circle of rejection around her. Even Von, who had smiled at her just days before, had turned away. The whispers cut deeper than any blade. Marked one. Emotion sick. Who would bond with that? Now, alone in the woods where no one could see her shame, Sarah let the tears fall freely. Each sob made her markings flare brighter, violet fading to blue, then back to violet, a display of her humiliation written across her body for anyone to see. She sank to her knees among the crystalline ferns, pressing her palms against the cool earth. "No one desires me," she whispered to the darkness, her voice breaking. "I'm wrong. I'm broken. You're beautiful." Sarah's head snapped up, her markings blazing sudden white with fear. A figure emerged from between the trees, tall, strange, wearing clothing unlike anything from her world. His skin held no luminescence, his features sharp and angular in ways that seemed alien yet somehow compelling. Jovan Reed raised his hand slowly, showing empty palms. He'd been wandering these woods for 3 days since his survey vessel had torn itself apart in the atmosphere. Every night he'd seen lights in the distance, the settlements he'd been warned away from in his briefings. Zephyrians didn't welcome outsiders. His survival pack was nearly empty, his comm unit shattered. He was lost. But he'd heard crying. And despite every regulation telling him to avoid contact, he couldn't ignore someone in pain. "I didn't mean to startle you," he said softly in his language, then tried the few Zephyrian words he'd learned from the cultural database. Peace. Friend. Sarah stared at him, her markings shifting through colors he'd never seen. Surprise, fear, confusion, and something else. Curiosity. Perhaps. She wiped her face quickly, trying to dim her glow through sheer will, but it was useless. You're from the fallen sky vessel," she breathed. "They are hunting you." Jovan nodded slowly. "I know. I'm sorry. I'll leave." "No." The word surprised them both. Sarah stood on trembling legs. "You called me beautiful." "You are." He met her eyes steadily. "Where I come from, light is precious. You shine like the stars themselves." Something in Sarah's chest twisted painfully. Her markings pulsed soft gold, a color she'd never seen in herself before. "Hope. Come with me," Jovan whispered, extending his hand. "Let me help you. Please." Sarah looked at his outstretched hand, then back toward the settlement where no one wanted her. She thought of Elder Thessa's cold eyes, of Von's rejection, of a lifetime of being told she was wrong. Then she placed her hand in his. The moment their skin touched, her markings exploded into radiant patterns, swirls and spirals that danced up her arms like living art. Jovan's breath caught. "What's happening?" he asked, wonder filling his voice. "I don't know," Sarah admitted, staring at the unprecedented display. "This has never happened before." Together, 2 lost souls in a forest of crystal and starlight, they began walking into an uncertain future, already changing each other in ways neither could yet understand. The hidden refuge. Jovan's makeshift shelter was little more than a torn section of his ship's hull propped against a rock formation, but to Sarah it felt safer than anywhere she'd ever been. She ducked inside, her markings providing soft illumination that revealed supply crates, scattered equipment, and a sleeping pad made from emergency blankets. "It's not much," Jovan said, following her inside. He activated a small thermal unit, and warmth began spreading through the cramped space. "But it's hidden from aerial searches." Sarah touched the metal walls with tentative fingers, feeling the strange coldness of the alien material. "You traveled between stars in this." "In something much larger. This is just a piece." He pulled out a ration pack and offered it to her. "Are you hungry?" She shook her head, still overwhelmed. Her markings had settled into a soft amber glow, wariness mixed with cautious comfort. "They'll search for me eventually. When I don't return. Will they? Jovan asked gently, reading the truth in her dimming light. Sarah's silence was answer enough. She sank onto the sleeping pad, drawing her knees to her chest. My mother died when I was young. My father bonded again, started a new family. They have normal children now. Children who don't embarrass them. Her markings flickered sad blue. I became a burden they tolerated. Tonight, I think they were relieved when I ran. Jovan settled beside her, careful to leave respectful space between them. My family said I was too curious, too restless. They wanted me to take over the farm, live a simple life on Earth. Instead, I joined the Exploration Corps. He smiled sadly. They stopped answering my transmissions years ago. I suppose we're both disappointing our families. You're not disappointing, Sarah said quickly, then blushed as her markings flared warm pink. I mean, you saved me. You were kind when you didn't have to be. Kindness doesn't require a reason. He noticed her shivering despite the warmth and carefully draped one of his thermal blankets around her shoulders. His fingers accidentally brushed her neck, and her markings responded immediately, cascading patterns of gold and rose that swirled across her skin like watercolors. Jovan froze. Did I hurt you? No. Sarah's voice was barely audible. It feels nice. No one touches me. Not anymore. Something in Jovan's chest tightened. He shifted closer, letting their shoulders touch. Sarah's breath hitched as new patterns emerged, delicate spirals that seemed to reach toward him. Tell me about your world, she whispered. Please. I want to forget mine for a while. So he did. Jovan spoke of Earth's single moon and vast oceans, of cities that touched the clouds and forests that stretched beyond sight. He told her about snow, frozen water falling from the sky, and she laughed in disbelief, her markings dancing bright yellow. Frozen water. That falls? You're inventing stories. I swear it's true. He pulled out his datapad, miraculously still functional, and showed her images. Sarah gasped, pressing close to see, her luminescence reflecting in the screen. Hours passed. Sarah taught him proper Zephyrian pronunciation, giggling when he mangled the complex vowels. He showed her his star charts, pointing out Earth's location, then Zephyros. The distance between them was incomprehensible. So far, Sarah murmured. You came so far, and ended up here. With me. Best crash landing I could have hoped for, Jovan said softly. Their eyes met. Sarah's markings shifted into colors she couldn't name, deep and warm and frightening in their intensity. Jovan's hand found hers again, and this time she interlaced their fingers deliberately, watching the light show dance across their joined hands. Jovan, she said, testing his name on her tongue. What happens when your people find you? They'll take me home. Regulations require it. He squeezed her hand gently. But that might be months away. The distress beacon is damaged. I've been trying to repair it, but... A sound outside froze them both. Voices. Zephyrian voices, sharp and commanding. Search pattern Delta. The human was spotted near the crystal falls. Expand the perimeter. What about the marked girl? Elder Thessa wants her located. If we find her with the outsider, the council will deem her contaminated. Purification or exile, either way, not our concern. Sarah's markings flashed white with terror. Jovan immediately pulled her close, wrapping the blanket around them both and dimming his light. In the darkness, her glow was all that existed. Breathe, he whispered against her hair. Slowly. Calm colors. Can you control it? I'm trying. But fear made her pulse brighter. Jovan did the only thing he could think of. He cupped her face gently in his hands and pressed his forehead to hers, a gesture of intimacy that transcended their different worlds. Look at me. Just me. Nothing else exists right now. Sarah's eyes locked onto his. The voices outside grew closer, then gradually faded. Minutes stretched like hours. But slowly, held in Jovan's steady presence, her markings dimmed to the softest lavender, trust, pure and fragile. When silence finally returned, neither moved apart. "Thank you," Sarah breathed. "Always," Jovan promised, and meant it with everything in him. The forbidden connection. Dawn broke over Zephyros in shades of amber and violet, the triple suns rising in sequence. Jovan woke to find Sarah curled against him, her markings dim in sleep, tracing peaceful patterns across her skin. He'd spent half the night watching those patterns, mesmerized by their complexity. She stirred, eyes opening slowly. For a moment confusion crossed her face, then memory returned and her markings flushed warm rose. "I fell asleep on you. I'm sorry." "Don't be." Jovan stretched carefully. "But we should move. They'll expand their search grid." They gathered his essential supplies and ventured deeper into Zephyros's wilderness, following a canyon that cut through bioluminescent valleys. The vegetation here glowed even in daylight, phosphorescent flowers, trailing vines that sparkled like jewelry, and massive fungi that hummed with stored energy. "It's incredible," Jovan said, documenting everything with his data pad. "This ecosystem shouldn't be possible by conventional biology." Sarah smiled at his enthusiasm. "My mother used to bring me here. She said this valley was old, from before the purists took control. Back when Zephyrians celebrated differences instead of condemning them." They climbed over crystalline rocks, and Jovan offered his hand at each difficult passage. Each touch brought those extraordinary patterns to Sarah's skin. She'd stopped trying to suppress them. By midday, they reached a sheltered grotto beside a luminous stream. While Jovan purified water through his filtration unit, Sarah removed her ceremonial outer robe, revealing the simple tunic beneath. The fabric was torn from her flight through the forest. "You're hurt," Jovan said, noticing the scrapes along her shoulder and side. "It's nothing. Let me help." He retrieved his medkit. "May I?" Sarah nodded, sitting on a smooth stone. Jovan knelt beside her, carefully cleaning the wounds with antiseptic cloth. His touch was gentle, professional, but every contact point made her markings swirl and dance. "Does it hurt when you glow?" he asked softly. "No. It's just exposing. Everyone can see what I feel. There's no hiding, no privacy." She watched the patterns spiral across her arms. "But with you, I don't mind as much. You don't judge what you see." Jovan applied the healing gel, his fingers trailing across her shoulder blade. "These patterns are different each time. Are they a language?" "Not intentionally. But other Zephyrians can read them, at least the basic emotions. Fear is white, anger is red, happiness is yellow." She paused as golden spirals emerged under his touch. "But these new ones, the complex patterns, I don't know what they mean. They only happen with you." "Maybe," Jovan said quietly, "they're emotions you haven't had words for yet." Sarah turned to face him, and suddenly they were close enough to share breath. Her markings shifted into deep, swirling rose gold, something profound and unnamed. Jovan's hand was still on her shoulder, thumb unconsciously stroking her collarbone. "Jovan," she whispered, "what are we doing?" "I don't know," he admitted. "But I can't regret it." Sarah's hand rose to touch his face, exploring the unfamiliar terrain of his features. No luminescence, just warm skin and the rough texture of stubble. He leaned into her touch, eyes closing. "In my world," she said softly, "bonding is decided by elders. It's logical, practical. Emotion is weakness." "In mine," Jovan replied, "we choose our own hearts. And emotion is what makes us alive." The space between them dissolved. Sarah kissed him first, uncertain, questioning. Jovan answered with gentle certainty, his hand sliding into her hair, deepening the kiss. Her markings exploded into brilliant light, patterns racing across her skin like wildfire. They broke apart, breathing hard. Sarah laughed shakily, looking at her glowing arms. "I've never shone like this. It's almost bright enough to hurt." "You're magnificent," Jovan said, wonder in his voice. They spent the afternoon in that hidden valley, sharing more than just stories now. Jovan traced the patterns on Sarah's skin, learning which touches made them swirl, which made them pulse. She explored the differences in his body, smooth where hers was luminous, solid where hers was delicate. As evening approached, they lay entwined by the stream, Sarah's head on Yovan's chest, listening to his heartbeat. "They'll call this contamination," she murmured. "The council will say you've corrupted me." "Have I?" Yovan asked, tilting her chin up to meet her eyes. Sarah's markings glowed steady gold, pure, honest joy. "You've freed me." But their peace shattered with the sound of approaching vehicles. Energy signatures hummed in the distance, council enforcers, moving in a grid pattern. "We have to run," Sarah said, fear creeping back in. Yovan kissed her forehead firmly. "Then we run together. I'm not losing you." They gathered their belongings and fled deeper into the valleys, toward the ancient places even the purists feared, the archive temples where old secrets slept. Behind them, the hunt intensified. But ahead, an unexpected truth awaited, one that would change everything they thought they knew about Sarah's curse and the destiny written in her luminous skin. The ancient truth. The archive temples rose from the canyon floor like crystallized bones, their surfaces covered in glyphs that pulsed with faint, ancient light. Sarah had heard stories of this place, forbidden ruins from before the purification, when Zephyros had welcomed travelers from distant stars. "The elders say these temples are cursed," Sarah whispered as they approached the massive entrance. Her markings flickered nervous violet. Yovan studied the architecture with growing excitement. "These aren't Zephyrian designs. Look at the symmetry, the mathematical proportions. This was built for multiple species." He touched one of the glowing glyphs and his datapad suddenly activated, displaying translation protocols. They entered cautiously. Inside, the walls were covered with murals, scenes of Zephyrians with luminous markings standing beside beings from other worlds. Ships descended from the stars. Hands clasped in friendship. And everywhere, patterns that matched the ones dancing across Sarah's skin. "Yovan," Sarah breathed, approaching a massive central mural. "These people, they all have markings like mine." A voice echoed through the chamber, cracked with age. "Not like yours, child. Exactly yours." They spun to find an elderly Zephyrian emerging from the shadows, her own faded markings barely visible beneath her skin. She moved with a walking staff carved from starwood, her eyes sharp despite her years. "Keep Alyssa," Sarah gasped, recognizing one of the disappeared, those who'd refused the purification laws and vanished into legend. "Sarah Minth." The old woman smiled gently. "I knew your grandmother. She had the gift too, before the council forced her into suppression therapy." Lyssa's gaze shifted to Yovan. "And you, human. You've awakened what should never have been allowed to sleep." "What do you mean?" Yovan stepped protectively closer to Sarah. Lyssa gestured to the murals. 3,000 years ago, Zephyros was dying. Our sun was failing, our people fading. Then the first visitors came, explorers, traders, diplomats from 100 worlds. They brought technology, yes, but more importantly, they brought genetic diversity. She moved to a panel showing Zephyrians with brilliant markings touching hands with alien visitors. Some of us developed the gift, a physiological response to emotional and genetic compatibility across species. The markings would glow in the presence of potential mates from other worlds, creating patterns unique to each pairing. Sarah's hand found Yovan's automatically. Her markings swirled into those now familiar complex spirals. "We were bridge builders," Lyssa continued. "Meant to unite worlds, to create understanding between species. Hybrid children were born, stronger, healthier, carrying the best of multiple peoples. Zephyros flourished." "What happened?" Yovan asked, though he suspected he knew. "Fear. Prejudice. Tradition." Lyssa's markings flashed brief red. The purists rose to power, claiming we were diluting Zephyrian purity. They outlawed interspecies contact, suppressed the gift, rewrote history. Those of us who carried the markings were labeled defective. Most underwent therapy to dim the gift. Some, like me, fled here. She approached Sarah, placing a weathered hand on the girl's glowing cheek. "But the gift cannot be destroyed, only suppressed. It emerges in families like yours, waiting for its purpose. And now." She glanced at Yovan. Now a human has crashed here, and the gift recognizes him. The patterns on your skin, Sarah, they're a bonding sequence. Ancient, sacred, and undeniable. Sarah's breath caught. But the prophecy the elders mention was twisted by them, Lissa interrupted. The true prophecy speaks of marked ones whose light would herald the return of the Starwalkers, breaking isolation and restoring Zephyros's true destiny. She moved to a sealed alcove and opened it, revealing a crystalline device. This is a beacon, connected to the old communication networks. If activated, it will broadcast beyond your system, Yovan. Your people will hear it. But so will others, the Confederation your ancestors once knew. The Council will never allow it, Sarah said. They'll kill us first. They're already trying. Lissa walked to a window overlooking the canyon. In the distance, lights approached, dozens of enforcement vehicles, surrounding the temple. They've tracked you here. Elder Thessa leads them personally. Yovan's jaw tightened. We'll fight. You'll fail, Lissa said simply. Unless you prove what you are. Sarah, your markings in Yovan's presence aren't just beautiful, they're powerful. The gift was designed to create shields, to communicate across language barriers, to heal. She gestured to the beacon. But it requires full activation. Complete emotional and physical bonding. Sarah's markings blazed crimson. You mean? I mean what your heart already knows. Lissa smiled gently. The ceremony your people perform is a pale shadow of true bonding. But you two have already begun the real process. You need only complete it. Outside, amplified voices demanded entry. Sarah Minth, you are charged with contamination and harboring an illegal alien. Surrender immediately. Yovan turned to Sarah, taking both her hands. I won't pressure you. Whatever you choose, I'm with you. Sarah looked at the murals, at Lissa's knowing eyes, at the beacon that could change everything. Then she looked at Yovan, this impossible human who'd called her beautiful, who'd held her through fear, who'd kissed her like she was precious. Her markings shifted into brilliant gold. I choose you, she whispered. I choose us. I choose the truth. Yovan pulled her close, kissing her deeply. Her markings erupted into patterns that climbed her skin like living art, and this time they didn't stop at her body. They extended outward, creating luminous shields around them both. Now, Lissa said urgently, activate the beacon together. Let your bonding power it. Show them what the gift truly means. Sarah and Yovan placed their joined hands on the crystalline device. Her markings flowed from her skin into the crystal, mixing with his touch, his warmth, his absolute acceptance of who she was. The beacon blazed to life, sending light shooting through the temple and up into the sky, a column of radiance visible across the entire continent. The temple doors burst open. Elder Thessa entered with armed guards, their weapons raised. But they stopped, shielding their eyes from the brilliant light emanating from Sarah and Yovan. Impossible, Thessa breathed. The gift cannot. The gift does what it was always meant to do, Lissa declared, her own markings flaring bright for the first time in decades. You've built your power on lies, Thessa. But the truth has a way of shining through. The beacon's light carried data, the temple's archives, the true history, evidence of the purest deception, broadcasting to every device on Zephyros. And beyond, into space, calling to those who remembered the old alliances. Sarah stood wrapped in Yovan's arms, her entire body glowing like a star, and for the first time in her life, she felt no shame. Only power. Only truth. Only love. The new dawn. The temple courtyard had become a standoff. Elder Thessa stood with her enforcers on one side, weapons lowered but ready. Sarah and Yovan stood on the other, Sarah's markings creating a shimmering barrier that the guards' energy weapons couldn't penetrate. Between them, Keeper Lissa projected the historical archives onto every available surface, irrefutable truth written in light. But the real change was happening beyond the temple. Across Zephyros, citizens watched the broadcast on their communication devices. They saw the murals. They heard Lissa's testimony. They witnessed Sarah's unprecedented display of the gift's true power. and they began to question everything they'd been told. "Your lies are finished," Lyssa said to Thessa. "The people know now. They know what we were, what we could be again." Thessa's expression twisted with rage and fear. One marked girl and an alien don't change 3,000 years of tradition. The council will. "The council is divided," a new voice interrupted. A younger elder, Vorian, stepped forward from the ranks. "Half of us never believed the gift was a curse. We simply lacked proof." He looked at Sarah with something like wonder. "But this changes everything." Movement rippled through the crowd. More enforcers lowered their weapons. Citizens who'd followed the pursuit began arriving, hundreds of them, drawn by the beacon's light and the truth it broadcast. Among them, Sarah spotted faces from her settlement. Her father stood at the edge of the crowd, his expression stunned. Beside him, her stepmother held their children close. And there, looking uncertain and ashamed, was Von, the boy who'd rejected her at the ceremony. "Sarah," her father called out, his voice cracking. I didn't know. They told us the gift was dangerous, that you were sick. I thought I was protecting you by keeping you hidden, by discouraging your emotions. I didn't realize I was hurting you." Sarah's markings flickered between gold and blue, hope and old pain warring within her. Jovan squeezed her hand supportively but didn't speak. This moment was hers. "You let them make me feel wrong," Sarah said quietly, but her voice carried across the courtyard. "Every day of my life, I felt like a burden. Like I was broken." Her markings swirled into determined rose gold. "But I'm not broken. I never was. And neither is anyone else who carries this gift." A ripple of sound moved through the crowd, affirmation, agreement, and something else. Several people in the gathering began to glow softly, their own suppressed markings responding to Sarah's words. A woman gasped as faint patterns appeared on her arms. A young man stared at his hands as light traced his veins. "The suppression therapy," Lyssa explained loudly, "was never permanent. The gift sleeps in many of you, waiting to be acknowledged, waiting to be celebrated." Thessa made a last desperate attempt to regain control. "This is contamination. The human has infected her, and now he'll infect all of you. Is this what you want? To lose your identity? To be whole?" Von stepped forward, surprising everyone. His own faint markings were beginning to emerge. "Elder Thessa, I underwent the therapy twice. My family paid fortune to suppress my markings. They told me I'd be undesirable, unmarriageable." He looked at Sarah. "I rejected you because I was taught to hate what I saw in myself. But watching you now, seeing your strength." His voice broke. "I was the one who was undesirable. And I'm sorry." Sarah nodded, accepting his apology. But her attention remained on Jovan, whose steady presence anchored her. A humming sound drew everyone's attention skyward. 3 ships descended through the atmosphere, human vessels, responding to the beacon. But they weren't alone. Other ships followed, designs Sarah had never seen, representing species whose names she'd only heard in ancient stories. Jovan's communication device crackled to life. "Commander Reed, this is Captain Anara of the UESC Meridian. We received your beacon. Are you safe?" "Safe," Jovan confirmed, looking at Sarah. "And requesting diplomatic protocols. First contact situation, peaceful and historic." Over the next hours, everything transformed. The arriving ships brought diplomats, historians, and medical experts. The Confederation, the ancient alliance the purists had rejected, had never forgotten Zephyros. They'd simply been waiting for an invitation to return. Elder Vorian assumed temporary leadership as Thessa was removed from power. The council underwent immediate restructuring. Laws were drafted to protect those with the gift, to restore the true history, to reopen Zephyros to the wider universe. Sarah found herself at the center of it all, Jovan always at her side. She became a bridge, just as Lyssa had said, speaking to both Zephyrians and the newcomers, her markings providing visual translation of emotions that words couldn't capture. But the most profound moments came in stolen quietness. Late that night, after the diplomats had established camp and the crowds had dispersed, Sarah and Jovan stood on the temple balcony, watching Zephyrosa's 3 moons rise. "Your people want you to return to Earth," Sarah said softly. "To report, to debrief. They said you'd be gone months, maybe a year." "They asked," Jovan agreed. "I told them I needed time to consider." He turned her to face him, his hands gentle on her waist. "Sarah, these past days with you have been everything. You're everything. But I won't trap you. Your world needs you. You're becoming a symbol, a leader." Sarah's markings swirled into deep, certain gold. "Then lead with me. Stay. Ambassador positions are being created. You could be Earth's representative here." She touched his face tenderly. "Or I could come with you, see your world, meet your people. I don't care where we are, Jovan. I just care that we're together." "You'd leave Zephyros? After everything you fought for?" "I fought to be seen, to be valued, to choose my own path." She kissed him softly. "I choose you, wherever that leads." Jovan pulled her close, and her markings created a cocoon of light around them both. Private, intimate, sacred. "Then we'll figure it out together. Maybe 6 months here, 6 months on Earth. Maybe we create something new, a home that's both and neither." "A bridge," Sarah whispered, smiling. "A bridge," he agreed. In the months that followed, that's exactly what they became. Sarah and Jovan traveled between worlds, their bonding officially recognized by both peoples. They helped establish the first joint research stations, educational exchanges, and cultural programs. Sarah's father slowly rebuilt their relationship, learning to see his daughter as the gift she'd always been. Von and others with emerging markings found acceptance and purpose. The gift, once called a curse, became Zephyrosa's greatest treasure. Children with markings were celebrated, not hidden. The ancient temples were restored. And when the first hybrid children were born, some to Sarah and Jovan, others to new cross-species families, they glowed with patterns never seen before, carrying the promise of a united future. On the anniversary of that first meeting in the crystalline forest, Sarah and Jovan returned to where it all began. She still remembered the pain of that night, the crushing loneliness, her whispered words, "No one desires me." Now, wrapped in Jovan's arms beneath the star trees, her markings creating art across both their bodies, Sarah understood the truth. She'd always been desirable, valuable, worthy. She just needed to find someone who could see it, and brave enough to choose a future no one else could imagine. "What are you thinking?" Jovan asked, kissing her temple. Sarah's markings swirled into every shade of happiness. That sometimes the best things in life come from the worst moments. That crashes can become beginnings. That being different isn't being broken. And she smiled, turning in his arms to kiss him properly. "And that I'm grateful you whispered, 'Come with me.'" "Always," Jovan murmured against her lips. "In every lifetime, across every star. Always." And there, beneath the luminous canopy of an alien world that had finally remembered how to embrace its truth, 2 souls from different worlds proved that love, real, fierce, transformative love, recognizes no boundaries but the ones we create ourselves. The end.